He kōna ipurangi tēnei nā te reo irirangi o Aotearoa.
Hello there, welcome along to the RNZ Interview Podcast. I'm Charlotte Ryan. I host the music show every Saturday afternoon on RNZ National, and I love playing new music to you. But in this format, I love bringing you my favourite interviews of the week. And if you're on the hunt for a brand new dance album, you need something to give you life, to motivate you, to uplift you, to make you dance, Jamie XX has just released his second album, In Waves. Jamie XX is an English musician, and his career started when he was just 18 years old, forming the band The XX with his friends. You might have seen them play Laneway Festival here in New Zealand many years ago. But Jamie's gone on to become one of the most in-demand producers, working with the likes of Radiohead and Adele. He's released that amazing Gil Scott-Heron remix album, and his tracks, so many of them, have become dance floor anthems. He won a Grammy for his first solo album, In Colours, and 9 years later, he's back with his second solo album. I was so stoked to get interview time with Jamie XX. I kind of felt like a mother a little bit, because I do remember when he and the XX came over to Laneway Festival many, many moons ago, and he was so young. He's so huge now and influential and so original, I guess, in his sound. And I wasn't really sure what he'd be like, but as you'll hear, he's incredibly well thought, and he was quite reserved, a lot more than I thought, compared to the party music he makes. How's your summer been? Because I'm sure it's been full of heaps of festivals.
It's been great. I haven't been going mad, because I know that the next year and a half is getting pretty intense. But I've done a few festivals, and I even managed to get a holiday in.
Oh, good. Where did you go holiday?
Ibiza, but I was also playing when I took some time off, and then I went to Norway to like the middle of nowhere where there's no phone signal, and had to fish for my dinner every night. It was exactly what I needed.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. That feels like such a juxtaposition from your other life of DJing on dance floors.
Yeah, exactly.
How are you feeling about the album release? Do you feel excited about the album coming out? Like, it's been received so well so far. So does that make you feel more excited?
Yeah, I'm very excited. I mean, it's been such a long time, even since the first single came out. And I've liked how slow the rollout has been, but I'm also actively trying to not look at reviews or not on social media or anything like that. So I'm mostly excited about the touring, because that's when I can sort of engage with it all.
Yeah. I wondered what it was for you, whether it was the touring and DJing and, or, you know, being on the dance floor, or if it's your studio.
It depends. Like, when I was finishing this record, I was so ready to be out there and playing again, just because you're just staring at the same speakers, at the same screen, and the ideas are just bouncing around inside your own head without anyone to help, really. So you kind of lose your mind a bit, but that's also an amazing place to be. And you're also thinking about, getting excited about playing stuff. I've definitely been in situations where I've been on tour for years and I'm ready to get back in the studio. So it's great to have both, just try and balance it out.
What's it like playing one of your songs for the first time?
It's always really exciting, because, if it's something that I've just come up with, then I'm still in love with that piece of music, and I can get such a instant visceral reaction from the crowd. It's never perfect. The first few times I play it, I'll go back to the studio and work out the structure depending on how the audience reacted, and come up with some new ideas. It's a great way to work. We tried that as a band, and you're kind of just constantly concentrating on not messing up, because you're having to play everything, so it doesn't really work. But just as a DJ, you get to play the song and literally just stand there and see and really engage with how it works.
And when you say, how it works or how to make it better, would it be sort of speeding up the tempo, or changing the key, or making the drop earlier or something?
A lot of it's to do with the structure, and then a lot of it's to do with just the sort of frequencies that things are working at, like where the bass and the kick sit and how they hit and how they feel on a massive sound system.
That's so interesting. Random, but I just interviewed Fontaines DC the other day, and I feel like, I don't know if you've listened to their new album yet, but when I hear it, I'm like, oh, this will work in stadiums. And I was convinced that they wrote it to play in bigger venues. I guess, with you, do you sort of think about, where it will be played?
Well, I'm lucky that I kind of get to play massive stages and also tiny clubs. And I guess my favorite thing to do is to play small clubs. Just because you're like so engaged with the crowd, you can see everybody's faces, and you kind of feel by the end of like a 3 hour set, you feel a connection with the audience that's unlike when you play to thousands of people.
Of
But I
course.
also love playing for big stages, big crowds. It's just a different thing, and I guess I'm thinking about all of it and none of it when I'm making music.
Yeah. I am addicted to In Waves. I'm so excited about it being released to the world. It has been a bit of time in between releases, but you've definitely been kept busy. But I was sort of reading that you were sort of almost in a bit of a rut. What do you think was the moment where you were like, okay, I feel good about music again?
Well, I mean, I was always enjoying what I do. I definitely never tried not to take it for granted. I'd just been touring and doing this since I was a teenager, and it's a very different life to everybody else, all my old friends. And I felt kind of disconnected from real life. So when I got home and the pandemic hit, and I had a chance to stop and just sort of think about what I'd been up to for the last however many years of my life, just take it all in, and also like learn how to look after myself instead of buy a tour manager or being in a different city every day. It just kind of, I just needed that grounding really to be able to get back in the studio and just make music like I used to when I was a kid, just for the fun of it. And then as soon as I started doing that, things started to fit together, and I wasn't thinking about trying to finish an album. I was just thinking about what I was going to do that day and how much fun I was going to have.
And during that time, were you listening to a lot of other music? And I guess my thought process behind that is on this album, there are so many amazing samples. And I'm intrigued to know where you find your samples or how you discover them or how you fall in love with them. Are you a record listener or do you listen to a lot of music?
Yeah, I mean, I've been buying records since I was tiny, and before that, I just stole all my parents' records. So I've got a lot of records, and I've got an endless sort of library in my head, very disorganized, of samples that one day I want to use that probably will never get used. But then when I'm making music, I can sort of draw from that and bring things in that just sort of, that come up when something feels like it might work. And I do spend a lot of time listening to music. I kind of go through phases where like I can't listen to anything modern because I find that it will directly influence me too much. So a lot of the time I'm listening to soul and jazz and folk. That's kind of the music that I grew up on.
Some of the songs that you have sampled, and Daffodil, a song by J.J. Barnes that was recorded originally in 1973. And, oh yeah, and that dance poem by Nikki Giovanni, I think that's from the 70s too. Were any of
Yeah.
these songs that you sampled, were they from your childhood?
No, none of these. I mean, like the songs from my childhood are like the hits, like Otis Redding and Fairport Convention, stuff like that. Very big artists. And I mean, that has been more of a thing in recent years, especially in hip hop, people sampling very big songs. I'm always, I'm on the hunt for things that people won't recognize necessarily that I can maybe flip and make something that's catchy and hopefully can reintroduce people to that artist that may have not been very popular in their time. First time I heard that, I knew that I wanted to use it. I just didn't find a place for it until making this record.
Nikki Giovanni, I hadn't heard of her until I was researching, and now I'm like deep. You are educating me.
Oh, that's great. I love that. I mean, I didn't know about her until I found that record probably about 10 years ago. I was on tour in Washington, D.C., and just kind of the best way to see a city in one day is to go record shopping because that's usually where all the cool stuff is anyway.
And do you sort of have your people track her down and make sure it's okay, or because I think she's still alive. I wonder if she's heard it.
I wonder. Yeah, I mean, we go through a very rigorous search for everybody and make sure everybody gets their dues and everybody likes it as well. I mean, that's the goal.
Yeah. Can we talk about your collaborations? Because there are so many brilliant artists on the album featured with you. Robin, who you've worked with before, the Avalanches, Erykah Badu. When you start working with an artist and you decide that perhaps their voice or something will work with the track, do you ever sort of talk about lyrics or ideas of lyrics, or do you leave it quite open? Say with the Robin single, for example.
Well, because I've been working with Robin for a number of years, just on her stuff mostly, I kind of knew that she would get it as soon as I sent it to her.
Mm.
And she nailed it, like first take pretty much, sent it back. And then we discussed a little bit, like, well, I was thinking what she was thinking. It was perfectly aligned. And sometimes I'll give a little hint about where I feel like it should go, or sometimes I'll just leave it up to the person. It's really depending on the vibe. It's always an interesting, inspiring experience, even if the music that comes out of it doesn't end up being anything in the world. But only through doing interviews, actually, I realized that everybody who ended up on the album pretty much is somebody that, like, I know quite well now and have like an existing relationship with, and I guess that makes it more meaningful to me.
Mm. Have you learnt to go into studio days without that expectation? Sort of, you said that, you've done so much work with artists and quite often tracks aren't used that you might record or, work on for days.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really expecting anything except for like just trying to do my best and come up with some good ideas and be prepped enough. But I always go into it knowing that when I come out of like quite an intense, sometimes awkward process of being a very quiet studio with somebody you don't know, at the end of it, I can go home and make music on my own and like sort of be reinvigorated in that way.
Could I ask quite a naive question? And I'm not a producer, and in any sense, I love music, but in your music there is so much rich landscapes and like lots of layers and everything. Do you ever use AI to create any of the sounds that you create or make?
I was looking into it towards the end of making this album. Just there's new stuff coming out every day, and it's better and better with AI. It's really interesting.
Mm.
I haven't used AI to like create music for me, which I know is a thing that people can do these days. But I've used it for like processing sounds and processing samples in ways that just would be impossible to do by ear. It's a great tool.
Yeah.
I mean, there are endless possibilities, but I kind of find that is not very helpful in terms of being creative.
Mm.
I need limitations. I need some walls up to be able to sort of hone in on something simple that will connect rather than every single possibility being available.
Yeah. Are you sort of a vintage synth collector? Do you use lots of vintage gear, or are you mainly just using your laptop or computers?
I do have a studio full of vintage gear. It's fun to collect and, it sounds beautiful. But I also spend a lot of my time just, on my laptop, on a plane or on a tour bus or backstage, where there is just that limitation of only having a laptop, and often that is the best way to come up with ideas.
Absolutely. I've actually seen a photo or a video of your studio, and it's such a beautiful space. It's quite minimal and an amazing view of London. Are you still in that studio?
Yeah. I was actually inspired when I came over to your side of the world. I had a studio by a beach, and every day I could just have the door open and look at the waves while I was making music. And at that point in London, I had a studio that was just in a basement like every other studio, and I was like, why am I just in a dark room every day when I could have something beautiful to look at? So I got this place in Soho in London where I can look out over the city, and it's really inspiring.
Is it an easy transition between creating music and that sort of organised minimal studio to then playing these huge chaotic festivals?
I used to be able to jump between the two a little bit better. I'm trying to just do one thing at a time. So I haven't actually made any music since mastering this album. It's been the longest amount of time that I've just stopped creating, which has actually been great for my head, and now I'm ready to get back into it. But it's nice to just focus on the live stuff for a bit.
Yeah, good on you. We were talking about your favourite clubs and, or, you like playing smaller venues. Would you ever think of owning a club? Lots of DJs kind of, love clubs so much they want to create one. Have you considered that?
I have considered it, and I very nearly bought a couple of different spots in London to build a club, and luckily, thankfully, they fell through because it would have changed my life dramatically, and I probably wouldn't have had time for anything else. And these small clubs that I've been like pop-up clubs that I've been doing around the world over the last few months has kind of scratched that itch. And actually, it's kind of even nicer to just have an intense period of time where the club exists and then it just be a memory. I think it stays with people.
Oh, I like that. And that actually reminds me of, I read this beautiful interview about you post-pandemic discovering all those parties.
Yeah, I mean, that was a great period in London where things had eased up a bit with the pandemic and everyone was just really excited to be back together. Just like you could literally just get a bike and cycle down the canal near where I live or into the forest. And people had brought sound systems and decks and were just so excited to be dancing together again.
I love that so much. I want to do that more here in New Zealand. Speaking of which, are there any plans over the next year and a half for you to come this side of the world?
Yes, for sure. We are working it out right now.
Yes.
I mean, I love coming over there, so as much as I can, really.
Yeah, good call. Good call. Well, congratulations on In Waves. It's such a great album. It's a total classic. I'm excited for you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
That wraps up another Music 101 interview podcast. Us speaking with Jamie XX. He formed the XX when he was just 18 years old, and he's just released his second solo album, In Waves, and it's, as I said, a brilliant album. Go and listen to it. And while you're there, if you haven't in a while, go listen to that Gil Scott-Heron album. If you've got any friends that love Jamie XX, make sure you forward them this podcast. And follow it if you don't already. Music 101 Interview Podcasts. Now, I'll be back on the radio next Saturday afternoon, as always, and any Music 101 content is all up on our website, rnz.co.nz/Music 101. But until next time, take care.